I want you to imagine uh, an impossible scenario. Just picture walking into a locked room and the sun is just starting to set outside the window.
It's already terrifying.
Right. And, with absolute terrifying certainty that you are going to be executed at dawn. But here's the thing. There are no guards in this room holding you down.
No physical restraints at all.
Exactly. No chains on your wrists. There is just a rule. A terrifying, totally unbreakable rule that has already claimed the lives of, countless people who stood in the exact same spot you're standing in right now.
It is a genuinely chilling image.
Yeah.
You're basically walking completely freely into your own demise, and you're just held there by the sheer gravity of a tyrant's decree.
Yes, and the most incredible part of this deep dive today is that the woman who finally broke that rule, she didn't use a hidden weapon. She didn't rally some secret army.
She brought something totally different.
She walked into that room with something far, far more dangerous. She brought a cliffhanger. So our mission today is to unpack a masterclass in survival and psychology from this fascinating piece called The Thousand Night Cure: How Stories Saved a Kingdom.
It's such a great source.
It really is. We are looking at the story of Scheherazade, the architect of the 1001 Nights, and how she faced down this unstoppable dictator using, well, literally nothing but storytelling.
Which sounds, almost quaint until you realize the actual stakes. It is so easy to brush this off as just an old bedtime story or a fairy tale.
Right, like a Disney movie or something.
Exactly. But when you look at the underlying mechanics of what actually happened in that room, it is not a fairy tale at all. It is this profound, deeply complex case study in trauma, in the architecture of healing, and really just human psychology.
Yeah, and to really understand her strategy, we have to start with the monster she was facing. We have to look at King Shirar. And what is so tragic here, based on the text, is that he wasn't always this monster.
No, not at all.
Once upon a time, this was a man who trusted love. He totally believed in loyalty. But he experienced a betrayal so deep, so completely shattering, that it basically broke something fundamental inside of his worldview.
Right. He made a conscious, defining decision in the aftermath of that betrayal. He decided no woman would ever be able to hurt him again.
Period.
Yeah, the capacity for vulnerability was completely eradicated, just gone.
And his solution to prevent that future pain was incredibly cruel. But in a twisted way, it was very simple. He would marry a new bride at sunset every single night, and he would have her killed at dawn.
Just horrifying.
He would execute her before she ever even had the chance to betray him. It was grief turned into a literal blade. So, okay, let's unpack this, because to you and me, this just looks like unhinged, psychopathic cruelty.
Which obviously it is.
Of course. But if you strip away the violence for a second and look at the mechanism, it is the ultimate extreme defensive mechanism. It's like firing everyone in your life before they have the chance to quit on you. It's almost exactly like an autoimmune disease.
Oh, how do you mean?
Well, think about it. When the human body is traumatized by a really severe infection, sometimes the immune system goes into absolute overdrive, right?
It gets confused.
Exactly. It becomes so hyper-focused on preventing another infection that it starts attacking its own healthy cells. It destroys its own host to ensure no invader can ever survive.
That is such a good way to look at it.
And Shahryar is doing the exact same thing to his kingdom. He is preemptively destroying his own people, his own future, just to guarantee that his ego and his heart are never infected by betrayal again.
That autoimmune analogy is spot on. And this is exactly why we are looking at such a vivid illustration of a trauma loop. The king has closed himself off completely from the human experience.
Yeah, the text even notes that people in his kingdom whispered about him like a storm you couldn't escape.
And that metaphor of the storm is highly accurate because,
Yeah.
A storm doesn't negotiate. A storm doesn't feel empathy. It just violently destroys everything in its path to maintain its own internal atmospheric pressure.
Wow, yeah. It just exists to destroy.
Right. Fear and unresolved grief. When they're given absolute power, they will paralyze an entire society. The kingdom was trapped inside his hyperactive immune response.
So if you are facing a storm that destroys everything it touches, you obviously can't fight it with force. Any direct attack is just going to be absorbed into the chaos.
It would be totally useless.
Which makes Scheherazade's approach so baffling.
Yeah.
Because she heard those whispers about the inescapable storm, and she voluntarily walked directly into it.
She did, and she walked in with a very specific central realization. She knew something that most people forget when they are dealing with a hostile individual.
What's that?
That a human heart, no matter how broken or defensive, still listens.
Even a heart that has been weaponized, like even this guy.
Exactly. It is still fundamentally a human processing center.
Yeah.
It still has an ear to the ground. It is still taking in data from the world, even if it is only scanning for threats.
Okay, so let's put ourselves in that room on the very first night. The door closes. The candles are flickering. The king is sitting in the shadows, expecting what he always gets, right?
Tears, screaming, begging for mercy.
Yeah. Or just a terrified, paralyzing silence.
Yeah.
But she doesn't give him any of those predictable inputs. She doesn't fight him or plead. She just starts to speak.
Just totally calm.
Softly, yeah.
Yeah.
Not desperate, not loud, just enough to spark a tiny bit of curiosity. She starts telling a tale of magic, of danger, of high adventure. She paints this vivid, immersive picture.
And then?
And then, right at the absolute climax of the story, she simply stops talking.
She creates a psychological vacuum.
But here's where it gets really interesting, because I have to push back on this a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand she essentially invented the cliffhanger to stay alive.
Right, it's a brilliant tactic.
Sure, the king physically leans forward out of the shadows. He is hooked. He asks, what happens next? And she lowers her eyes and says, I will tell you tomorrow if I am still alive. It's a massive psychological gamble. But is a cliffhanger really enough to stop a killer?
It seems too simple, doesn't it?
It really does. We're talking about a tyrant with a deeply ingrained compulsion to execute people. It seems wild that a simple open loose in a fictional story could override his trauma response.
Well, what's fascinating here is that you have to look at what that open loop actually does to the human brain. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect.
It's the Zeigarnik effect.
Yeah. Human beings have an incredibly intense cognitive discomfort with interrupted or incomplete tasks. We crave closure. And you have to remember, this is a man who operates on absolute rigid certainty.
Oh, because sunset equals marriage, dawn equals death.
Exactly. It is a perfectly closed, predictable loop.
Right. He controls every single variable.
Precisely. But when she stops speaking right at the climax, she hijacks that need for closure. For the very first time, he hesitates. And that hesitation is a cognitive crack in his fortress.
Because he needs to know the ending.
Yes. By creating this gap of unresolved tension, she triggers a release of dopamine in his brain. That's the neurotransmitter associated with craving and reward. She essentially replaces the king's death wish with something entirely new, which is anticipation.
Wow. So the craving to close the cognitive loop actually overrides the trauma loop. He is suddenly looking forward to the future, even if it is just the next night, instead of trying to violently control and destroy it.
It's a total hijack of his operating system.
I mean, I get how creating a single moment of hesitation is a brilliant survival trick for one night. Keeps your head on your shoulders for 24 hours.
Right.
But how does she bridge the gap from, hey, I want to know what happens to the magical genie, to, I am fundamentally going to change my moral compass and stop executing women? That is a massive psychological leap.
It is a massive leap, which is why it didn't happen overnight. It happened over 1,001 nights. The timeline here is critical.
So it's about endurance.
Completely. The next night, she gives him the ending to the first story, satisfying that dopamine craving, but she immediately weaves it into the beginning of a second story.
Oh, so he's never fully satisfied.
Exactly. And then a third story. Each ending right before the answer is revealed. Nights turn into weeks. Weeks turn into months. And as this goes on, the king's mindset slowly undergoes a process of habituation.
Habituation meaning he just gets used to her.
More than that, he gets used to the environment being safe. He is no longer waiting for the dawn to execute someone. He is waiting for the dawn with curiosity.
His nervous system is calming down.
Yes, his nervous system is slowly stepping out of that hypervigilant autoimmune overdrive we talked about earlier.
So what does this all mean for the actual stories? How do they factor into this? Because if she's just keeping him in a state of suspense, isn't that basically just distracting a volatile dictator, like, jingling keys in front of a dangerous baby?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is so much more than distraction. It is a highly calculated, covert form of exposure therapy.
Oh, wow. Exposure therapy.
Yeah, these stories weren't just random entertainment to pass the time. They functioned as psychological mirrors. Think about the specific tales she told.
Right. The text mentions genies, thieves, sailors, queens.
Yes. She told stories of powerful genies who were trapped in bottles, furious at the world, ready to destroy whoever let them out. She told stories of kings who made rash, cruel decisions and paid terrible prices.
Wait. She was essentially telling him stories about himself.
Exactly.
That is so bold.
Think about how impossible it is to confront someone who is deeply traumatized, defensive, and holding all the power. If Scheherazade had walked into that room and said, Shahryar, your coping mechanisms are toxic, you're projecting your pain onto innocent women, and you need to go to therapy and learn mercy, I mean, what would have happened?
Oh, he would have executed her before she even finished the sentence. His ego would immediately perceive her as a threat to his survival.
Right, a direct attack on a defensive wall only makes the wall stronger. But fiction operates on a completely different frequency. Fiction allows us to safely process reality through narrative distance.
Okay, narrative distance.
Yes. By projecting his own trauma, his own fears of betrayal, and his own moral failings onto these fictional genies and kings, Shahryar could observe himself from a safe distance.
That makes so much sense. He could judge the cruelty of a fictional king and realize, wow, that guy's acting like a tyrant, without feeling like his own ego was under attack.
Yes. Narrative distance creates emotional safety. She smuggled empathy past his defenses disguised as a plot twist.
Disguised as a plot twist. I love that.
Through these characters, kings learned mercy. Villains actually faced consequences. Lovers demonstrated true, enduring loyalty. Over 3 years, she was systematically taking the shattered pieces of his worldview and rebuilding them piece by piece.
So he was basically practicing empathy.
Exactly. She allowed him to practice empathy and mercy in the abstract, so his brain could eventually wire itself to apply those concepts in reality.
It is neuroplasticity in action. Over 1,001 days of this safe, consistent exposure to empathy, his brain physically rewired itself. The neural pathways dedicated to the trauma response weakened, and the pathways for human connection strengthened.
That's incredible.
And this dynamic resonated so deeply across human history. The text points out that this legend spread across the Middle East, Persia, India, and beyond, forming the tapestry of the 1001 Nights.
And each culture added its own threads to it.
Right, but every culture that touched it understood the core truth, which is that words, when wielded with enough patience, can dismantle a sword. Words, not swords, save lives.
It is a profound testament to the universal power of narrative. The mechanism of using a story to heal a broken mind is something every human culture intuitively grasps.
Which brings us to the climax of this incredible journey. We arrive at the 1001st night, the major milestone, and Shahryar is a completely changed man.
Totally transformed.
The necessity for revenge has completely faded away. The hyperactive immune response has finally recognized that there is no more infection to fight. He looks at Scheherazade and he no longer sees his next victim.
No, he sees his savior, really.
He sees the architect of his own healing, and he actively chooses to let her live. But there's a really unsettling truth here when you zoom out and look at the physical reality of what she did.
Unsettling in what way?
Just the sheer endurance of it. The text emphasizes this. She sat in the darkness, night after agonizing night, with a literal executioner. She survives by trusting that her imagination could outlast his fear.
Oh, I see what you mean. The toll it must have taken.
Yeah, she trusted that her patience could outmaneuver his deeply ingrained cruelty. It is a staggering amount of emotional labor.
This raises an important question, and it is exactly where this historical legend transitions into a profound metaphor for the human condition.
How so?
Because it is incredibly easy to look at King Shahryar as just an ancient fairy tale villain, a caricature of evil. But if we are being completely honest, inside everyone who has ever been hurt, which is all of us, there is a miniature version of that king.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree.
There is a part of us that becomes guarded, closed off, and ready to destroy relationships or sabotage opportunities before we can be hurt or betrayed again. We all have that internal tyrant.
We really do.
But crucially, inside us, there is also a Scheherazade. There is a voice of imagination, of profound patience, trying to reach through that pain and offer a different narrative.
I want you to think about that dynamic in your own life right now. Think about the last time you were deeply betrayed, maybe by a partner or a friend, or even in a toxic work environment.
It happens to all of us.
It does. And when you experience that kind of intense conflict and stress, what is your default reaction? Do you immediately put up walls? Do you let the inner king take over, preemptively firing everyone in your life, shutting down your empathy, and letting your grief turn into a weapon?
It's the easier path, honestly.
It is. Or do you find the strength to listen to the Scheherazade within you? That quiet, patient voice that says, wait, don't burn it all down just yet. Let's see what happens next. Let's look at this from another perspective.
It perfectly encapsulates the internal battle between our immediate trauma responses and our long-term capacity for healing. The inner king wants to end the story immediately because ending the story means controlling the outcome.
Right, it guarantees no surprises.
Exactly. The inner Scheherazade wants to keep the story going to discover the outcome, accepting the vulnerability that comes with the unknown.
And accepting that vulnerability is the only way to actually cure the autoimmune response of a broken heart. We have been on such an incredible journey in today's deep dive.
We really have.
We started with an impossible scenario. A seemingly helpless woman who voluntarily walked into a deadly locked room. And we watched as she used the psychology of the cliffhanger, the gradual rewiring of neuroplasticity, and the safe distance of narrative to completely dismantle an empire of grief.
Proving that empathy and patience are stronger than raw power.
Exactly. She proved over 1,001 nights that words are ultimately stronger and far more enduring than swords.
She basically cured a tyrant by holding up a mirror to his soul, slowly giving him back his humanity, one unresolved ending at a time.
But I want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to ponder on your own. We spend so much time focusing on the brilliant stories she told. We focus on the genies, the sailors, the magic.
The exciting plot twists.
Right, we focus on how she stopped speaking at the most exciting moments to keep him hooked. But what if the real magic wasn't actually in the words she spoke? What if the true healing happened in the silence she left in between?
Oh, the psychological vacuum.
Exactly. Consider that empty space.
Yeah.
When she stopped talking right at the climax of the story, the room went completely quiet. The candles burned down to the wax. And for the rest of the night, until the dawn broke, the king had to sit alone in the quiet.
With nothing but his own mind.
Right. For the first time since his shattering betrayal, he was forced to imagine a future, rather than just endlessly looping and dwelling on his past. He had to sit with his own thoughts and just wonder.
That's a really powerful image.
So ask yourself, in your own life, how much of your healing and your learning happens not in the constant, overwhelming stream of information and content you consume every day, but in the quiet, unresolved spaces between the chapters.
Wow.
Think about that locked room at sunset. Sometimes the only way out of your own internal storm isn't to fight it, it's to sit in the quiet, embrace the uncertainty, and wonder what happens tomorrow.
I love that.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring, keep listening, and we'll catch you next time.